Today, I'm going to walk you through the early Social Security strategies that beat delaying. I'm a certified financial planner and the owner of a fee-only financial planning firm, and the strategies I'm going to show you today have helped my clients achieve their retirement and financial goals without having to wait until they're 70 to claim Social Security. Claiming Social Security at 70 is, quote-unquote, the safe decision for many retirees, and in many circumstances, the right one, but it can be misleading that it is always the correct decision. By waiting, retirees assume they will always get more from their benefits. However, there are good reasons to claim early, and that's precisely what we're going to break down in today's video. Not only will we discuss why claiming late isn't always the best decision, but we will also show some thought-provoking scenarios on the screen. And so with that being said, stay tuned for this whole video, and we're going to get right into it. Making the optimal Social Security claiming decision is completely unique to each individual's situation. And while there are many factors that should be considered, in this video, we're going to focus on three primary considerations in the Social Security claiming decision. And the first consideration is understanding when people actually retire. See, the thing is, income needs to be produced coincident with one's retirement. And for most of you watching this video, that income is going to come from one or two sources, either retirement savings or Social Security, or most likely both. And so the question is, when do Americans actually retire? Because that's when they actually have to start getting income from their retirement savings or other. And so to answer that, I'm going to show some data on the screen here that comes from a fascinating study done by the Employee Benefit Research Institute. And that study is entitled Expectations About Retirement. And this study found that there is actually a large gap between when people think they will retire and when they actually do retire. So I'm going to read a couple sentences directly from the study. There is a big gap between when active workers expect to retire and when retirees say they actually did. Workers continue to report an expected median retirement age of 65, while retirees report that they retired at a median age of 62. And so to compound this even further, 33% of people think they will retire at or after 70, when in fact only 6% of people do. And 11% of people report expecting to retire before 60, when in actuality, 33% of people actually retire before 60. So fully a third of people retire before 60, more than the majority retire before 63. And the people that think they'll work longer and after 70 really don't end up doing that. And so obviously what matters is when people actually retire, not when they think they're going to retire. And this means that despite the fact that I'm here presenting in a YouTube video, it's actually not all that helpful to watch some YouTube video about the secret best way to claim Social Security. It's actually far more important to build a model for yourself that helps you understand Social Security income's specific impact on your financial plan so that you can make the ideal claiming decision for yourself. And so it's my hope that through the additional two factors we're going to review in this video, that I will help you successfully build a model that details for whom and when claiming Social Security early can make sense both personally and financially. And because I can only stand to listen to myself talk for so long in each of these YouTube videos, I can't cover every part of Social Security in one video. And so I actually have released a video that explains in great detail how to time your Social Security around your circumstances. And if you want to watch that video, it's an earlier video. I'll leave a link at the end of this one so you can watch it straight after this video. And so once we understand that most Americans retire far earlier than they think, and in actuality, most Americans actually retire at or earlier than age 62, now we can layer on the second factor, which is how long do people actually live? Now, the real answer here, as you all know, is that only God knows. But the Center for Disease Control and Social Security Administration both have some helpful data on this as well. And as of 2022, and I'll show this on the screen here, as of 2022, according to the CDC, the median life expectancy for men is 74.8 years. For women, it's 80.2 years. However, a much more helpful data point is how long do people live once they retire? And so for this, there was a study done called the Association of Retirement Age with Mortality. And so I'll just read a brief quote from this study. In a population-based study of US adults, we found that early retirement was associated with increased mortality risk, and prolonged working life is related to survival benefits among both healthy and unhealthy retirees, independent of a wide range of socio-demographic, lifestyle, and health-related confounds. By using a cohort of U.S. adults who do not face mandatory retirement and have a flexible retirement arrangement, we were able to extend previous research by showing late retirement was independently related to reduced risk of mortality. And what this effectively says is that retiring earlier by mandatory retirement, meaning not by choice, has a correlation or a connection to early mortality risk. In fact, the study found that retiring early by 1 year compared to one's expectation of when one would like to retire led to somewhere between a 9 and 11% higher risk of all-cause mortality. So one interpretation of this study is that work is actually a prophylactic, right? It's a defense mechanism against early death. And my interpretation of all the information I've shared so far is the following. Most Americans will need to produce retirement income earlier than they expect. This mismatch of when they think they will need retirement income versus when they actually will need it can be both financially and psychologically jarring. And not only that, but people tend to spend more while they are young and then less as they age and then finally spend the most for end-of-life care costs, and this is a concept called the retirement spending smile. This means that the strain on a retiree's portfolio will be the greatest in the earliest portion of retirement, and then again in the final year or two of retirement, where you'll have also a respite or the lowest amount of strain in your retirement during the middle and the bulk of the years of your retirement. Now, this tells us a lot about where a retiree will face risk and ultimately provides a great deal of insight into the Social Security claiming strategy that I'm going to show now. Claiming Social Security early is actually an effective prophylactic or defense mechanism because it reduces early distribution strain and can give retirement assets more time to grow. Not only that, it can be extremely effective at protecting against the effective sequence of returns because it reduces the distribution requirement from retirement savings. Now, I'm going to show both of these scenarios on the screen right now so we can attach real numbers to what I've been talking about. And so on the screen here, I'm showing a cash flow comparison table for a hypothetical person who has a starting portfolio value of $1,375,000. They want to spend roughly $63,000 of income. They've been forced into retirement at age 61, and we want to understand better what the material effect of claiming Social Security at age 70 versus 62 is. And what you can see here on the left side is that this column in orange here are the distribution rates from this retiree's portfolio. And these distribution rates begin at roughly 4.6% and then go as high as 7.19% at age 69 before they claim Social Security, and ultimately at age 70, those distribution rates start to trough and will continue to go down over time. Now, in this scenario, they're claiming Social Security at age 70, and so that makes sense. They'll have a higher amount of front-loaded risk as a result because they don't have other income sources than their portfolio. On this right side, you can see claiming Social Security at 62 acts as a prophylactic or a defense against this. The distribution rate starts out exactly the same in year one of retirement at age 61 before this person can actually claim Social Security. But then this person claims Social Security in this scenario and has a distribution rate that starts at 4% and never peaks any higher than 4.53% at age 69. Now, this actually is most effectively summarized using this summary table over here. And what this shows is that in age 61, where there's no Social Security, there's no difference between the retirement incomes or the distributions. But at age 62, you now have a difference in the distribution rate that starts at a difference of 1.2%. It peaks as high as 2.66% in the final year at 69. But ultimately, what the real material impact of this is the dollars. How many dollars of portfolio value are preserved in the first 9 years of retirement as a result of an early Social Security claiming decision? And the answer is that's roughly $160,000. Now, as I said, this is a prophylactic for early distribution rate risk where you might be spending more in early retirement. And obviously there are trade-offs to this. You will end up with higher distribution rates in later retirement because you don't have the deferred Social Security benefit that then grows inflation adjusted. However, the second thing we'd like to layer onto this is what happens if you have negative market returns in early retirement. And so before we actually show the same hypothetical person with the same portfolio value and what happens to their portfolio as a result of these market returns, I'd like to explain a concept that we call the loss recovery rule. The loss recovery rule says that it takes a higher amount of gains to gain back a loss, and this relationship grows the bigger the loss is. And so I'll illustrate this right here on the screen. So on the screen here, you can see that a loss of 10% requires an 11% gain in order to get back to break even. A loss of 30% requires a 43% gain roughly to get back to break even. And a loss of 50% requires an 100% gain, which is doubling to break even. Now, more important than just how much percentage it takes to get back to break even is actually how long does it take to get back to break even? What's the time? Because what matters most when you're retiring is time. You don't have time to wait out market corrections. And so if we use the historic average rate of return for the past 100 years of the S&P 500, assume you're fully invested 100% in the stock market at this 7.44% rate of return, which is inflation adjusted, it would take 1.5 years to recover that 10% loss. It would take 5.76 years to recover that 30% loss, and it would take 13 years to recover that 50% loss. Now, this effect is compounded when we add in distributions on top of market losses. So we add in, let's just say, an assumed 4% distribution on top of the market loss. Let's say you have a 10% loss and a 4% distribution, which effectively means your portfolio has gone down 14% in value in that year. You now need a 16.28% gain in order to get back to break even. And this relationship holds true for all those different levels of losses and distributions. It's an exponential relationship, not a linear one. And this can best be summarized by this summary table right here, which shows that if you have a 10% loss and a 4% distribution, the extra growth you need just to recover that 4% distribution is 5.17%. At 30% loss, with the 4% distribution, the extra growth required just to cover the distribution is 8.66%. And obviously, it goes without saying that the extra distribution on top of the loss means that your break-even period, or how long it takes to recover, will be extended because of that exponential relationship. And so now that we understand the loss recovery rule, let's look at how this actually all comes into effect in a sequence of returns scenario for this same hypothetical person with a starting portfolio value of $1,375,000. Now, in year one of their retirement, year one of claiming Social Security at age 62, you can see the growth rate is here in this column. We begin with a positive growth rate for 2 years, which means their portfolio value will go up. And you can see that in the ending balance column for each scenario. We have a Social Security at 70 scenario and a Social Security at 62 scenario. And you can see that early on, the balance does go up from that starting balance of $1,375,000. However, you can see the balance obviously goes up more in this age 62 claiming, and that makes sense because there's some extra sources of income. Now, where this actually becomes material is when we have our 2 years right here at age 64 and age 65 of negative market returns. And ultimately what happens here is we have a higher distribution rate or a higher strain or drain on the portfolio in this Social Security at 70 scenario. And we have 2 years of negative market returns. And what ends up happening here is at age 66, we have a trough or a lowest portfolio value as a result, or a low portfolio value as a result. And the largest portfolio value discrepancy, we actually have an almost $100,000 portfolio value discrepancy here at age 66. And what you'll see is in the rest of the scenario, if we look down at age 70, the portfolio never actually fully recovers in either scenario, but there is a prophylactic or protective element to the Social Security at 62 because this extra source of income helps reduce the drain or the shrinking of the portfolio value. And we can best see this again in the summary table over here on the right. What we have here is a comparison of these scenarios at the summary level. Social Security at age 70, Social Security at age 62, and then the delta. And we can see that the total distributions, the Social Security at age 70 obviously is going to have higher total distributions. The delta here is about $170,000. The starting portfolio value is the same in each scenario, but the ending portfolio values at the end of those 9 years are dramatically different. We have a $758,000 ending portfolio value for this person if they claim Social Security at 70, and we have a $934,000 portfolio value at age 70 if this person claims Social Security at age 62. There's that $176,000 difference. That's a combination of the distributions and market returns. But ultimately what we see here is that at the end of the 9-year period, this person, if they claim at 70, their portfolio is $616,000 lower than where it started, versus being $440,000 lower than where it started if they claim at 62. And nobody knows where life will go from this point. We don't know where life will go after age 70 for this scenario. But if they were to have another period of poor sequence of returns, maybe 1 or 2 years of bad returns that were shortly after the scenario I've just shown, the person claiming Social Security at age 70 would be starting with a much lower portfolio principal value, and therefore at a higher risk, again, of this negative sequence of returns. And we don't really know what will happen here, but this is a compelling case and a compelling reason to consider taking Social Security early. And so if you, like me, want to optimize for the value and stability of your retirement in the youth of your retirement, and you are an individual who is not married, the lower earning spouse in a couple if you are married, you have a sizable pool of retirement assets, and maybe you have a shorter life expectancy, maybe not all 4 of those criteria, but some combination of those things, then you should strongly consider an early Social Security claiming strategy. Now, the exact manner and age at which you claim should be completely unique. It should be individually designed for you using some combination of financial planning tools, spreadsheet models like the ones I've shown in this video, combined with a great deal of discussion with trusted sources such as a spouse, a loved one, or a financial planner. And at the end of the day, as I've repeated several times now, Social Security is an extremely valuable tool that should be uniquely applied to every individual's situation, uniquely applied. And not only that, it's very helpful to evaluate these scenarios well in advance of needing to make any Social Security claiming decisions at all, as is evidenced by the data from the EBRI study, the Employee Benefits Research Institute study. Retirement can come as a surprise, and in fact, for many of us, it does. And so I always recommend giving yourself at least 5 years of runway to begin planning for these things so that you don't end up forced to make the best of a bad decision because of circumstance. So with that said, if you'd like to learn more about how we help our clients at Peak Financial Planning, you can visit our website at www.thepeakfp.com. Thanks as always for your time and attention, and I'll see you in the next video.